Recording now. Okay, so Keith, we're so happy to host you today and to kind of dig into this broad theme of being a green entrepreneur and your experiences with value propositions and business models, which sounds like a dry topic, but I think we're going to find that it can be quite interesting. So maybe we start off by introducing yourself. How you got into this whole space of green entrepreneurship and what's kind of keeping you in it, right? Because it's obviously not an easy path to take.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to join. I'm Keith with Aqua-Cell Energy. And what got us started, I guess to introduce what we do a little bit, is we're working on saltwater batteries for solar panels so that businesses can save money on their electricity bill. And what got us started and what really got me motivated to start this business is, I had this idea for a saltwater battery, and to give some context, I worked on this as part of my master's degree. And I always thought, okay, this is a really cool technology. I proposed the technology to my professors, and I thought, if this is successful, I'd love to start a business out of it. In the back of my head, I was always thinking, once I graduate my master's, I'll think about starting a business. And then I got to the University of Waterloo, and I learned about this big entrepreneurship ecosystem. I started attending some events, and everybody's telling me, no, you should start now. You're a student, you get opportunities as there's a lot better grant opportunities as a student, and you get a head start that way. So that's what's kind of started us down this path. Is okay, as I'm building the technology in the lab, I started to talk to customers to learn, okay, what's actually important for them. So you can kind of tailor how we thought about what value we're bringing with this battery. Maybe that's a preamble to get into the conversation, but that's I think starting early is really helped us, and just being surrounded by this ecosystem was really motivated us to start now rather than after we graduated. Otherwise, I'd just be getting started now, and I'd be so much further behind.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to speak a bit to the green side, what got you into sort of the green space?
That's right. So I had some. So my undergrad degree was in chemical engineering. It's funny. I actually started out at the University of Calgary, and I was doing a petroleum engineering minor. So pretty much the opposite. And I just thought, okay, I'm in Alberta. This is the industry I should probably work in. And I just, as I was taking the courses, I realized I didn't like it. My general philosophy, I want to be cleaning up the world rather than making a bigger mess. So that inspired me to pivot back then, and I did an energy environmental specialization for my degree. And in doing that, I started working in different research labs on different battery technologies. I learned that one of the biggest problems with solar panels, and it's great to have green electricity, and solar panels are now cheaper than coal, but one of the biggest things holding that back from seeing a lot of solar panels is that the battery technologies are just too expensive. So that's where I started to learn about. I worked on different battery technologies in labs in my undergrad. There's great research sponsorship programs that I was able to learn about it, and then that led me to this saltwater battery, because then it's all right. This is a cheap way to enable solar panels for the masses.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, that's interesting how you had that sort of that moment, that ethical moment, right?
Yeah.
When you decided to take that different path, and that's pretty neat. So the theme for this week for the students, of course, is all around. They learned a bit about what a value proposition is, and they're diving into a little more detail on business models. So maybe we look at it from the angle of value proposition. When did you first get introduced to that concept, and how have you used that to sort of have you gone about testing your value proposition? What have you learned from that process that maybe you could provide some advice to our students with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think when I was first introduced to the concept of value proposition, like, I mean, right off the bat, I could think like, okay, saltwater batteries, they're going to be valuable because they're more affordable. But I probably got introduced to this, actually thinking about this concept of a value proposition at the University of Waterloo through the Velocity programming. They host a lot of entrepreneurship workshops where I learned about these concepts. And what I think I learned is it's one thing to build a solution, and that's what we started out doing. We're building a battery, and this battery is going to be cheaper, and it's people are going to buy it, and that is like a very simple value proposition, is affordability. But there is a lot more to it. There's the customers are interested in, of course, they're interested in low cost, and that's one of our biggest ones. But there's a lot of other considerations that they might think of, and the best way I think to learn about what value propositions. First of all, you want to think about what's valuable for your customers. So for me, it was a matter of interviewing the people who, and it's just a quick call, a 20-minute call to learn about, okay, I know you're thinking about installing batteries, like what has worked well for you with like lithium batteries? What do you like about them, and what do you wish would change? And so for us, then it became more not only just low cost, but it's like, okay, how easy is it to operate this battery? Is there maintenance required? Will it operate in cold temperatures? Is there, how long is the battery going to last? There's all these other questions that pop up, and that actually helps us to, in the design phase too. So I think learning about your value propositions early can actually help you inform how you go about building your product.
Yeah, and you mentioned talking to customers. Did you find that you had multiple different sort of profiles of customers that you're trying to figure out who in fact would your customer be? Like, was that part of your process as well?
I think so. Yeah, there are, for us, it's about different markets, and well, no, that's actually different markets and different types of customers. So
Yeah.
there's we're trying to sell into a channel partner that sells to a lot of different types of customers, but then each channel partner services different customer groups. So I guess to put some examples, like there's remote communities that might be interested in this battery. There's big commercial facilities that might be interested. There's also like utilities on a very large scale, and everybody was interested in different things. And I'm still learning about this and into where's the best way to fit our technology, because you got to think about what product you can build and where there's the most alignment with the customer segments. I've got probably 3 to 5. It probably started out with 10, but 3 to 5 different customer segments that would benefit from our battery. And they all have slightly different value propositions or values that they're looking for.
Yeah, no, and it just goes to show you that it's like peeling an onion too, and you're always continually trying to test and iterate the value proposition based on that audience, right? So
Absolutely.
that's, we could probably talk forever on all those learnings you had there. So so the other piece is like the business model, and I know you've been playing around with that as well, right? Like, and you've also been, of course, pulling together different grant opportunities and things like that, and kind of thinking through how do you go about generating a revenue? And I know that you're still in that research and development stage with your technology, but like what have you learned so far about business models, or which one shows the most promise at this point, or do you still have a few that you're kind of exploring?
Yeah, so I would say we have some assumptions about what business models are going to work the best. Because we're focusing on piloting the battery right now, it's just a matter about getting the battery in the field. And so definitely when it comes to business models, like there's lots of different options to consider. Probably good context, like I'm biased obviously because I have a hardware product, so that limits what sort of business models we can work on. Obviously we're not going to have like a software as a service, but you can take inspirations from different types of business models. So we've thought about, right now I think the big one that we're debating between, and we're getting feedback on either side of the spectrum, is let's say we could lease this battery out to people and charge it kind of like the battery as a service to people, versus just selling the battery outright. There's benefits, there's pros and cons to each, right? Like if we're leasing the battery, everybody talks about having recurring revenue, and that's very useful for businesses. Investors want to see recurring revenue because they know that there's always going to be cash coming into this company. And then from the customer's point of view, because we're working on a new technology, it's kind of beneficial for them because we still own the battery. It's less risky for them. They don't have to pay upfront for this expensive battery. So they're more comfortable paying like a monthly lease payment than paying a bunch of money up front. Then I guess that's also one of the cons of the leasing model, is that means we have to pay all the money up front. And now we have to think about, okay, how do we finance this? Like, where is that money going to come from? We have to raise grants to buy all these batteries, and then we're going to get recurring revenue, but that's going to get paid out over time. So now we have to think about, okay, do I have to raise investment to be able to fund this? So there's a lot of pros and cons to that. And then when it comes to selling the battery, that's a more traditional way to sell batteries, and that's maybe what some of our customers are more used to. Something to consider is like maybe a large customer actually has maybe they would just rather buy it outright because they have the money, they have the upfront cost, and they don't want to deal with the lease payment. They'll receive more, like, because the lease payments we're getting paid on, they might actually get more value in like a monthly cost savings if they buy it up front, but then it's a higher risk. So there's a lot of different things that we're considering. And, I have a hypothesis. I think that the leasing model is going to be the best, but that's something that we'll be testing out like after we finish our pilots, and we're going to have some more serious conversations with our customers. Like, okay, which one are they actually going to do? It's one thing to say, I think they're going to do this, but when it comes to signing a check, that's also a different story.
Yeah. And I think, like, at a high level too, you're pointing to this fact that as entrepreneurs, we're always continually working with and testing assumptions that we have, right? And that's how we sort of move forward. We have to just accept that, okay, well, this is an assumption that we have, and how do we prove or disprove it, right?
That's right.
And it's sort of like a continual process that way. So
Mhm.
so lastly, Keith, I guess, like, if you think back to maybe your undergrad self,
Yeah.
you're in second year, and you're getting exposed to all these different concepts, green entrepreneurship, things like that. What pieces of advice would you give yourself knowing what you know now?
That's a good question. So I think battery might die soon. I think that starting early is. Sorry, Tanya. Could I actually just go charge my battery? I don't want to lose you in the middle
totally.
of this. My laptop just gave me a warning.
We'll do. I'll press pause to resume here. So Keith, last question for you. If you think back to your undergrad years, you're in second year, you're sort of getting introduced to all these different concepts in terms of sustainability and energy and entrepreneurship. And I guess, knowing what you know now, what would be some pieces of advice you'd give to your second year self?
Yeah, so I think if I had to give any advice, it would probably be to start now. If especially if you have a good idea and it's something you're thinking about, like, oh, I could do this, but how am I gonna, or I could go get a job. Like, how am I gonna do this? Like a lot of people have that question. It's like, should I pursue entrepreneurship, or should I just go like the traditional route? Where, like, your parents are probably like, no, just go get a job, and like but I think that now is the best time, because this is what I hear from a lot of people, is once you go out and graduate, you start making money, and it's hard to give up that paycheck once you're there, right? Like as a founder, like, yeah, you don't get to make as much money, but you get the chance of building something big. So maybe you only have like a 25% chance or 50% chance or a 10% chance of like becoming really successful. But it's like you have the chance that if you are successful, if you do have that good idea, now is the best time. You're used to being broke, you're used to being a student. Like it's not a big shift, right? And you can go and work on this, and then you get the chance of building like having your dream life. Like you get to be in charge of your schedule, although you end up working probably a lot more as an entrepreneur. But but you get that freedom, and you get the chance to really make your passions become true. And I think and the other benefit of starting now is, as a student, you get so many opportunities for grant funding, especially at the University of Waterloo. Like the greenhouse program has a great social innovators in training funding available. Velocity has a great program. Problem Pitch. There's all these resources that you can actually get started, get some money now to work on your ideas, and yeah, I think you have the highest chance if you start early.
Yeah, right on, right on. No, that's great. So yeah, thank you, Keith, so much for your time today. Wait, who knows? You
Absolutely.
may have a few students in the audience that are really curious about your venture and whatnot. So we'll be sure to
Absolutely.
share resources on that. And yeah, and we look forward to seeing what's next for you in terms of your demonstration sites. And I'm very excited to see where things go, because we caught up briefly before this call, and I was just blown away by all the new developments that you've made as well. So super excited for you, and
Mhm.
yeah, looking forward to seeing the next steps on where Aqua-Cell is going. So thank you very much for doing this today.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy that I could be here.
Okay, fantastic. Thank